South Africa, Excellency from the Diplomatic Corps, Mrs. Fatumia Alivazi, Chargée de Mission at the Indian Ocean Commission, Mrs. Asha Kanal, Acting UN Resident Coordinator, Mrs. Aline Wong, FCEM Commissioner, and all presidents present, distinguished guests, members, and dear friends. Good evening. I'm Margaret, Vice President of IMFCE. May I wish you all a very warm welcome. I have the pleasure to be your Master of Ceremony this evening. Each year, around the world, International Women's Day is celebrated on March 8th. Thousands of events occur to mark the economic, political, and social achievements of women. Today, we want to express our gratitude to Her Excellency, Dr. Nomvuyo Nokwe, High Commissioner of the Republic of South Africa, for her engagement and enthusiasm to move forward the women's agenda. We also want to thank our partners, EFOE, WIN, and IOC, for joining us to celebrate and honor this day with a panel discussion on the theme, Women in Democracy. May I now invite the President of EMFCE, Femi Apadu, for her speech.
Good evening, everybody. Once again, a warm welcome. I greeted all of you upon arrival, but once again, thank you for being here. Her Excellency Dr. Nomvuyo, and I believe that you told me that your name means joy, so what a wonderful name. Mrs. Asha Kanal, Acting UN Resident Coordinator, Fatumia, Chargée de Mission à la COI, Aline, Commissaire de FCM, and of course my friends from AMFCE, EFOE, and WIN. From the bottom of my heart, I really want to welcome you here this evening. Somebody asked me, do we normally host events here? And I said no, but we've got a wonderful friend, a wonderful partner in the person of Fatumia, who is always here to support and accompany us in our endeavors. And this one, I must tell you, was done within very short notice. So we didn't have much time to prepare. So Fatumia, thank you again for being always there for Women Entrepreneurs. Without further much ado, I'm just going to quickly tell you what AMFCE is all about in case anybody sitting in this room doesn't know what we do. And welcome to Ms. Bali. Now basically, AMFCE, c'est l'Association Mauricienne des Femmes Chefs d'Entreprise. We are in Mauritius. We exist since 1986. We are affiliated to FCEM Mondial, which is a network of women entrepreneurs globally. And our mission is to regroup women entrepreneurs, to get them to share their knowledge and also to act as mentor for women entrepreneurs who might not be in the same position as most of our members are. So basically at AMFCE, there's just under 40 members at present. When I say 40 members, it means that because our members are basically all people who need to have a registered companies. But those who do not have a registered company, they do join us via EFOE, and we've got our friends from EFOE sitting there. So, which means that IMFCE, we touch basically about 60 odd women entrepreneurs across the island. So it's my privilege to be amongst you here this evening and to talk about something that is making the headlines, women in democracy. So I wish you all a very wonderful evening and a lovely debate.
Thank you, President Vimy, for those encouraging words. Now I have the pleasure to invite Her Excellency, Dr. Nomvuyo Nokwe, to deliver her speech.
Your Excellencies, and Madam Ampadu. I'm honored today to be here amongst, like-minded women. Little did I know, I was at Madame Mirelle Martin this afternoon's, presentation and, the event that she hosted. And little did I know that I was going to be sitting next to Madame here. And I think we were destined to be doing this together. But I am honored, distinguished guests, that you have made your time, your valuable time, because time is of essence these days. We don't have much of it, but you are here in your numbers. Little did I know, we were sitting somewhere, I think about 2 weeks ago, planning this event, not knowing how and where and, how we're going to, but here we are, in the midst of excellent ladies, and I'm sure we'll be sharing wonderful events. I will just briefly go through why this day. If you know that in the 20th century, around 1910, women were equally like yourselves entering into the industrialized world in Europe and in the Americas. And of course, as usual, the women were downtrodden, they didn't have sufficient wages, and they were suffering. And of course, being the women they are, they just said, enough is enough. They are not going to be taking this. They became, unionized, and therefore that's why we are celebrating this day. And I think at the same time, not only are we celebrating, but we're also reflecting and looking at what are the achievements and what are the challenges. And I think this will form part of the debate today, that we will be battling and grappling as to how, because all these issues affect each one of us in each country and each continent. So it's nothing new that we the women are still not well recognized, even though we have, if you look at South Africa, we have the most wonderful constitution, but still there are all those gaps and challenges that we have to face. And indeed we are saying, no, we need to have more liberated women, we need more solidarity with like-minded people like yourself. I would just briefly say that as our government is in the forefront of fighting the scourge of women abuse, and I'm sure we were all dismayed and shocked at the events that have been splashing our newspaper internationally and locally, that how our women were treated, and especially in the case of one particular lady who was disemboweled and raped multiple times, not only in South Africa. It was so funny, it also happened in India as well. So, but the response was quite, alarming, in that all of the women came out in solidarity, not only women, but also men as well, because we also have amongst yourselves men. So definitely, our constitution is there to protect, and we have wonderful legislation, which is also gender-based and sensitive, and also it is one of the best constitutions that we can have. And then looking at also today's objective is to share experiences, like I've said before, and to build solidarity. And I hope by the end of the day, we would have each exchanged and networked our names, addresses, contacts, so that we build this strong relationship that together we can win this battle of abuse and and lack of emancipation. And we are hoping that through this, and I'm now looking at the relationship between South Africa and Mauritius, that this will enhance and deepen our relationship, because it only can happen to people's people, because you are the ones who then can inform policy of how it's supposed to be done. Now we can then debate and discuss how do we foremost prevent the scourge of violence, because it affects us all. Equally and more so in other places, especially when you look at the girl child and women also who are mostly coming from disadvantaged areas. And then this, and not last, but then is to say, we in South Africa, just like yourselves, we have a gender ministry. We've also, after Beijing, we also have a ministry of women children and persons of disabilities within the national and provincial executives. And then in each place we have standing committees on disability and quality of life and status of the women in national and provincial legislation. I think we haven't done too badly in terms of, addressing some of those issues. But least but not last, I will then have to now read a message from my Minister Maite Nkowane Mashabane, on the occasion of the International Women's Day. As we commemorate International Women's Day on 8th March, we join the peoples of the world in recognizing the importance of women in society and their contribution to social progress, international peace and security. It is through our collective efforts in the struggle for the full emancipation of women that we are able to forge international solidarity with the rest of the humanity in the fight for human rights, dignity and equality. Though much progress has been made in our society, we cannot utterly assert itself free from gender-based discrimination and violence, inequality, gender wage discrepancies, inequalities in access to land and social services. In the recent past, we have seen and heard and read about shocking acts of gender-based violence, such as the rape and mutilation around the globe and in our own country. 2 rape cases of a 23-year-old Jyoti Singh Pandai on a public bus in New Delhi, and that of a 17-year-old Aine Boyson, among others, come to mind. Acts of brutal violence against women, rape and murder necessitate that we raise awareness to combat, prevent this scourge in our society. We welcome the newly established Council for Gender-Based Violence and the establishment of the Sexual Offence Courts. These are part of our commitments as a country to deal effectively with gender-based violence. As our department, our role in the international arena enables us to further take the struggle for women's empowerment and gender equality. We welcome and encourage the messages of support from international community, particularly those emanating from the 57th session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women, whose emphasis is on preventing and ending violence against women and girls. We anticipate that these messages will be fully embraced and translated into plans of action by women, men, young people, civil society, the private sector, labor, religious organization, and governments. I thank you.
Thank you, Her Excellency. A promise is a promise. Time for action to end violence against women is this year's UN theme. We are proud to have Mrs. Asha Kanan, Acting UN Resident Coordinator, to share on the occasion of International Women's Day the message of the United Nations Secretary General.
Your Excellency, Dr. Namgyu Wo, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly,
Okay.
South African High Commissioner, Ms. Aline Wong, Commissioner of the World Organization of Women's Entrepreneurs, Mrs. Wimi Apadu, President of Association Mauritian des Femmes Chefs d'Entrepreneurs, Mrs. Fatumia Ali Bazi, representative of the Indian Ocean Commission, Excellencies, members of Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for the United Nations Development Programme and the UN agencies to be associated with this function being organized by AMFCE together with its partners EFOI and WIN in collaboration with the South African High Commission to mark the International Women's Day. The theme chosen for today's panel discussion, Women in Democracy, is very pertinent globally and for Mauritius, and we look forward to hearing the views of the eminent panelists and personalities present here today. Democracy is one of the core principles of the United Nations. Democracy is a universal value based on the freely expressed will of people to determine their own political, economic, social, and cultural systems and their full participation in all aspects of their lives. A fair representation and active participation of women in governance is one of the key preconditions for achieving genuine democracy. Gender equality and women's empowerment is one of the key Millennium Development Goals, as you all know. There can be no real democracy if half the population is excluded from participation and power. In Mauritius, women represent around 52% of the population. Yet, in the last general election, the percentage of elected women in parliament was 17.8%. Fortunately, there has been an improvement and women's representation at local government increased from 6.4% to 26.2% following the last elections. Achieving gender equality as a tool to strengthen democracy remains one of the top priorities of the United Nations. UNDP, for its new 2013-2016 country program, has set a special focus on gender equality and will develop activities together with UN Women. And in this context, delivering as one gender focal point has been appointed since January 2013, who is helping out the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Gender Equality. The UN's theme to commemorate this year's International Women's Day is "A Promise is a Promise. Time for action to end violence against women." Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot be contented with mere words and thoughts if we want the gender agenda to gain momentum. We need collaborative action from all the stakeholders, particularly the younger generation, to make it happen. Allow me now to read out the message of the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Some of you have already heard it, so I request you to kindly bear with me. Quote, "As we commemorate International Women's Day, we must look back on a year of shocking crimes of violence against women and girls and ask ourselves how to usher in a better future. One young woman was gang raped to death. Another committed suicide out of a sense of shame that should have attached to the perpetrators. Young teens were shot at close range for daring to seek an education. These atrocities, which rightly sparked global outrage, were part of much larger problem that pervades virtually society and every realm of life. Look around at the women you are with. Think of those you cherish in your families and your communities, and understand that there is a statistical likelihood that many of them have suffered violence in their lifetime. Even more have comforted a sister or friend sharing their grief and anger following an attack. This year, on International Women's Day, we convert our outrage into action. We declare that we will prosecute crimes against women and never allow women to be subjected to punishments for the abuses they have suffered. We renew our pledge to combat this global health menace wherever it may lurk, in homes and businesses, in war zones and placid countries, and in the minds of people who allow violence to continue. We also make a special promise to women in conflict situations where sexual violence too often becomes a tool of war aimed at humiliating the enemy by destroying their dignity. To those women we say, the United Nations stands with you. As Secretary General, I insist that the welfare of all victims of sexual violence in conflict must be at the forefront of our activities. And I instruct my senior advisors to make response to sexual violence a priority in all our peacemaking, peacekeeping, and peace-building activities. The United Nations system is advancing our Unite to End Violence Against Women campaign, which is based on the simple but powerful premise that all women and girls have a fundamental human right to live free of violence. This week in New York, at the Commission on the Status of Women, the world is holding the largest ever UN Assembly on ending violence against women. We will make the most of this gathering and we keep pressing for progress long after it concludes. I welcome the many governments, groups and individuals who have contributed to this campaign. I urge everyone to join our effort. Whether you lend your funds to a cause or your voice to an outcry, you can be part of a global push to end the injustice and provide women and girls with the security, safety, and freedom they deserve. And of course, thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cannon, for this message that goes deep into our hearts. I would now call Mrs. Fatoumia Alibasi, chargée de mission to the Indian Ocean Commission, for her speech.
Excellency Dr. Nokwe, High Commissioner of the Republic of South Africa, Excellency Diplomatic Corps, Mrs. Kanan, Acting UN Resident Coordinator, Mrs. Vimy Apadou, Présidente de l'Association Mauricienne des Femmes Chefs d'Entreprise, la MFCE, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to welcome you in the offices of the Indian Ocean Commission to celebrate the International Women's Day. This initiative comes from the High Commissioner of the Republic of South Africa and MFCE, to whom we extend our warmest gratitude. We are here today, this evening, to discuss about a broad but fundamental topic, women in democracy. It's a theme that the IOC has, since 2007, been tackling through its focus, action which have brought about concrete results. And this only the beginning. The commitment of the IOC on the theme linked to gender will be renewed and consolidated. But before I embark on this, allow me to present our organization to you. Founded in 1982, the Indian Ocean Commission is an intergovernmental organization of regional cooperation that groups 5 member states: Comoros, France, Réunion, Madagascar, Mauritius, and Seychelles. The IOC is the only African regional organization which comprises exclusively of islands. The IOC has proven itself over the years as a natural platform to defend the specific interests of its island states, which have in common isolation, sensitive environment, exposure to natural disasters, and a high dependence of marine and coastal resources. The IOC mission is to strengthen the ties of friendship and solidarity between peoples and to contribute to the sustainable development of its member states. The mission of the IOC have gradually evolved to meet new challenges: food security, climate change, energy and environment, and to cope with issues related to globalization and regional integration. To achieve this, the IOC articulates its mission around 4 strategy priorities: political and diplomatic cooperation, economy and trade cooperation, regional sustainable development, and the strengthening of the regional culture identity. The gender issue, to which the IOC attaches great importance, is vast and it regroups the over 4 strategy priorities. Indeed, the IOC has adopted a holistic approach by validating a regional strategy, gender, at the 25th Council Ministers meeting in 2009. The regional strategy on gender focuses on 4 areas: fight against gender-based violence, improving women's participation in decision-making process in politics, strengthening the economic weight of women through the promotion of female entrepreneurship, and empowering the role of women in sustainable development policies and particularly in food security. Ladies and gentlemen, the IOC is fully committed to the realization of the third objective of the Millennium Development Goal for the development devoted to gender. Our objectives are realistic and some have already been attained. Our actions are fruitful as they involve our financial and technical partners, the EU, UN system, African Development Bank. Our actions are especially fruitful because the women for whom we work are already involved in those actions. Since the setting up of the regional strategy for gender, the IOC has realized the following. In March 2011, we launched the regional platform for women in politics. That was only a first step, which we need to consolidate of even review of a wider involvement of the African region. And here I would like to mention that in line with the topic that the group has this evening, Women in Democracy, the example of one of the IOC members, the Seychelles. A study carried out by the Royal Commonwealth Society in 54 countries, member of the Commonwealth, ranked Seychelles at the 4th position as a country where it feels good to born a girl. This is an example for the whole world and for the other countries, members of IOC, where still much effort is required for gender parity. In July 2011, a regional platform, the Fight Against Gender-Based Violence, was launched. This event coincided with the launching of the campaign of the Secretary General of the United Nations to end gender-based violence, tous unis pour mettre fin à la violence à l'égard des femmes. We are organizing a regional meeting and awareness training for journalists on gender-based violence in Madagascar. In May 2012, in South Korea, the IOC has signed a partnership agreement with the Global Network of Women Entrepreneurship to boost its regional network of women entrepreneurs, Entreprendre Féminin Océan Indien. Moreover, the IOC organized a regional forum, Premier Forum des Femmes Entrepreneurs de l'Océan Indien, in Madagascar in October 2012. In the context of this meeting, an agreement has been signed with the Network of Women Entrepreneurship of Central Africa with the objective of sharing best practice and the promotion of women entrepreneurship in the African region. As you can see, the IOC has created a mobilizing network for the benefit of women. We rejoice also that our actions have led to the emergence of female leadership. For instance, Mrs. Sylvia Pages, the president of the IOC Regional Platform of Women Entrepreneurship and the Regional Platform of Madagascar, is becoming a key figure of women empowerment in the region. Here prove that economy and social empowerment open the doors of decision-making spheres. That being said, efforts are needed in the pursuit of our mandate that's been women and sustainable development. This is what we do. I have the pleasure to announce that the launching of the Women and Sustainable Development Platform on the 20th March in Majenga, Madagascar. Ladies and gentlemen, the action of the IOC should continue. This is a new intervention program that we will work for the period of 2012 and 2018 changing attitude. Given women the place that it bears, that is to stay on an equal footing with men to end violence, is a long process which the IOC will spare no effort. To do this, we know we can count on the solidarity and support of our ongoing and active technical and financial partners. We thank them. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Her Excellency and the MFCE, Excellency Dr. Noker, High Commission of the Republic of South Africa and MFCE for having organized this debate. Your Excellency, your presence among us today, your commitment for gender equality, we have the opportunity to start a successful collaboration on a theme which of common interest to us. I thank the President of the Association of Mauritius Women Entrepreneurs, Mrs. Vimy Apadou, and the Commissioner of the International Federation of Women Entrepreneurs, Aline Wong, with whom we have a long relationship of collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatumia. We will now showcase a short film of 3 minutes on IOC, a film to commemorate their 30 years of existence that was celebrated on the 5th of December last year.
In 1982, in Port Louis, 3 countries, Madagascar, Mauritius and Seychelles, came together to build a region of peace and prosperity. The Indian Ocean Commission was born. 2 years later, the IOC is officially established upon signature of the Victoria Agreement in the Seychelles. In 1986, the Comoros and Reunion, a French overseas department, signed the Agreement for Regional Cooperation. Day after day, for 30 years, we have brought together men, women and the necessary means to improve our living conditions and secure a better future for generations to come. We share an immense natural and cultural wealth, one ocean, but we also face challenges. Our islands are unique and fragile. Our resources are being depleted. And still today, it is our unity that makes us strong. It allows us to reinforce peace and democracy, to fight against illegal fishing, piracy, to protect the environment, to cope with natural disasters and climate change, to monitor epidemics, to improve our agricultural production, to develop trade, to overcome inequalities, and to give women their rightful place in society. Our islands would not be able to address all of these challenges on their own. With the financial support from our partners, we network, train and empower fishermen, farmers, doctors, entrepreneurs and lawyers. We provide our member states with the necessary tools and information to help them make the best choices possible. Thanks to the IOC, our islands share the experiences and know-how. We are the link, the driving force for progress. Together, let us make Indian Oceania's heartbeat.
I now hand over to President Billy, who will also be the moderator for the panel discussion. May I just remind you, it's Women in Democracy. I invite you to participate and share your views during the open session. Thank you.
Right, thanks Margaret. And that was a nice video indeed. Right, thanks Margaret for reminding us on the theme of the debate, just in case we thought it was not women in democracy, but men in democracy. Right, let me just remind you what we're going to be talking about for the next half an hour or so with the 4 panelists that we've got. First of all, thank you very much to, Bali. Thank you, what a pleasure to have you amongst us. And what an honor, because you're not from here, so we were lucky enough to have you through the embassy, and I'm sure that you will contribute a lot to this debate. Loga, a long-standing friend, and to both the MFC and quite a few of us here from Gender Links. Now, anybody who doesn't know Loga, well then you can have time to talk to her during the networking. But somebody very interesting to know. She's got a long withstanding experience in everything to do with gender-based violence and politics, and that's what you're going to talk about to us this evening. Then, of course, we've got Fatumia, and congratulations, Fatumia, for the English. Well done. She made the special effort for you too. So, So Fatumia, being chargée de mission à la COE, she's going to talk to us about gender-based projects in general. So, but I think we can allow her to intervene in French. Aline, commissaire for FCEM, of course, no surprise, she's going to be talking to us about the economic development of women. Now, ladies, I sent you basically the 3 areas that we would like you to intervene on this evening. We'll try, like some of you mentioned to me, you would basically like to be very short in your intervention, as you would like to keep more time for questions, and I think that makes a lot of sense at the end of the day. So basically what's going to happen is that I suppose if each one of you would take about 5 to 7 minutes in your intervention, which are based on 3 areas. I'm just going to refresh my memory, I'm also getting old. Which is, well, how you view the evolution of women over the last decade in the fields that you have been evolving. So that would be political and your arena, and of course economic, and Fatumia would be generally speaking in your area. Second is, according to you, what needs to be done over and above what is already done, what you think needs to be done more. And I put a final question in there, which is, when do you think, when will we know that we have achieved it? There's a lot of things happening, there's a lot of things that is said that, things like, having a platform is one thing, but being heard is another. I don't know. So I leave it open to you, and I suppose Mbali being from abroad. Well, Bali can intervene, Bali can talk from the heart. That's how we talk normally, right? Now, Bali, we've seen your CV, a very rich CV in terms of what you do. Bali is a poet and a writer. She's also a radio performer. She's also a facilitator. So, and you have been working mostly with women. So maybe your intervention here would be interesting for us women in Mauritius as to how you have seen it evolving where you come from. So that will give us an opportunity to know you better, and also to see, maybe to learn from you, because also that is the purpose here today. So I'll pass you onto the microphone then, buddy. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Put it on. Good evening, everyone. As I've been introduced, my name is Mbali Vilagazi. I'm from South Africa, and I'm a creative. Specifically a poet, and I work with creativity in the service of my community and my society. So I specifically use creativity to have what I think are conversations that are missing, or things that we need to be thinking about, or using creativity to have those conversations differently in order to increase the awareness, but also get people inspired enough to move and find their own responses. But I also work with creativity in a creative facilitator context, which means I use creativity as a tool to assist young women, and in some cases young men as well, in different contexts, whether it be in schools or in prisons or in leadership capacity, assisting them to find their own voices, giving them the tools with which to find their own voices, to give them the tools to be able to interrogate what's happening within their communities, within their spaces, and also to begin to enable them to learn how to respond, and also not only just speak to each other, but begin to have voices to speak to us, because for me that's one of the key things, which is why I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity to be here this evening, because I think it's that happening in practice, because I'm one of the youngest people in the room, and I've been placed on an esteemed panel to make my voice heard, and that's what I commit and dedicate myself to back home, in terms of how do I assist young women to find their voices, and then also to be able to begin to have the confidence to use their voices in contexts where they're not usually found. So getting young women to be able to articulate what the challenges are for them, where they are, and then to begin to speak for themselves, because a lot of the time when we are discussing the issues or looking at how to address some of the issues, we're speaking on behalf of people a lot of the time. So I'm really interested in how do we empower young people to begin to have the tools to address their own issues and in fact speak for themselves and be able to come into spaces where they normally aren't there and do that work of highlighting that. And the evolution of women in the last decade in creativity. How has it evolved? Within a particular context where I come from in South Africa, and then also looking at what I do in particular, because it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to speak honestly in a general capacity around arts in general in South Africa, but from a writing perspective and a poetry perspective, it's evolving. I can certainly say that we have a lot more women visible, because you have women there, but a lot of the time the issue is that the public space is so contested, and the manner in which you are able to interact with, hear, see, meet some of these women is mediated in ways that sometimes don't make it so easy for that to happen. So there are a lot more women who are visible, who are being heard, and who are setting the agenda, in fact, in public space. And I think that's what's important, because it's not just how do we respond to what is happening all the time, but when do we also begin to set the agenda? When do we walk into space, take up space, and decide what the conversations are in those spaces and how we're going to have the conversations in those spaces, to what end, with whom. So there's a lot more of that happening, and as a young person, having had to come walk through that space and be influenced and impacted upon by writers who come before me, I can certainly say that it's worked, because we're here and we're many. And we're also then beginning to use our voices to disseminate and ensure that we're also speaking to a lot more young women and creating a safe space for young women to see themselves, firstly, because it's important for young women to turn on the TV and turn on the radio and hear our voices and see us, and we look like them and we sound like them and we have the same issues as them, we're struggling with the same things, we have the same aspirations. So we're visible. The women ahead of us are visible, but certainly, as is always the case, they could be more. And the laws are there, the policies are there, but the issue, of course, is always how does that translate into something practical and tangible. But we certainly have a more formidable force of vocal and very clear women who take up public space in terms of writing. And they're writing in newspapers, and they're writing in journals, and they're writing essays, and they're writing books. And they're coming to schools, and they're giving talks. And so we have an active contingent of South African women who are very present. And I think it's certainly moved, because also we're not just looking at the evolution in terms of, just in a vacuum. We're looking at an evolution that's taken place from a political context in my country that's also then changed and created a new space which comes with its own complexities and issues. So there's a transition that's happening. So, the way in which we're also responding, how we're participating within the creative space is also being altered, because the situation of the country is altered. So we're in a process of redefining and then setting the course for probably what will then take place in the next 10 years. But I can certainly say that as a young person who is situated within the onset of what is the next 10 years, I think we're doing all right. I think we are overwhelmed at times, because there has been a lot of incidents of violence against women in the country, and we're at the forefront of that because we're visible and we're out there, and we need to respond to that, and we need to have things, we need to be talking to people about these things, but we're also overwhelmed and we're also traumatized at times. So it's a constant dance that's happening, but I can certainly say that it has evolved. There are a lot more women within public space, within the creative space, although I don't think we are at a government level and perhaps at a policy level. I'm not sure if we are many there or as many as we could be. And so perhaps we start thinking differently as well. How do we begin to move differently in space and align ourselves also within, what is happening within governance, what is happening within organizations, and how do we align ourselves with that in order to strengthen that as well, so that everyone's moving in the same direction, and then we can use what we do to assist those policies to move forward and entrench them and make them work for people.
That was excellent, Tanya. It's very, very interesting to hear very inspiring to hear these things that you do with the younger people, and probably we'll have the opportunity to ask you a few questions about that later on. And you have also the time to hear a couple of success stories that there might have been and that could be inspiring as well to us here. Right, thank you very much. We move on to Luga. Yes, indeed. Before coming to Fatumia and Aline. Now Luga is going to talk to us from political aspect, from the heart as well, right? And about a topic that she holds close to her heart.
Yeah. Thank you, Vimy. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. And I'm very pleased to meet you, Dr. Nukwe, and because my head office is in South Africa, as you may know. Maybe you've heard of Genelix, I don't know, because we work in the 15 countries of the SADC, and we have an office here in Mauritius, and we do lots of research. And I was telling Vimy, I said, you know what I did? I took your email with me and said, okay, I'm going to go according to your questions here, what you've put. And very often, when we talk about democracy, we forget women in this system, in democracy. But true democracy, if you don't have women in political position, in position of influence, you can't call it democracy, really, when we talk about democracy. And Mauritius is supposed to be a model of democracy. But what do we see on the ground? It's true that we've gone a long way, but it's very slow, very, very slow. And in politics, for example, before the 2010 elections, we had 17% women in parliament, and it increased by only 2%. So we have 19% women now. Not even 19, it's 18.8%. So I prefer to say 19 because I get so upset about it, you see. And for local government as well, it was 6.4%, and now we have 30%, which is a big increase, and which is fantastic because it's a model, in fact. And why did it happen? It happened because we have gender activists, we have people who've been sort of holding banners and walking in the streets, and the government also, we must congratulate the government also, they put laws, the new Local Government Act, which stipulates that there must be a gender-neutral quota. And they had to change the constitution to be able to do that, to put this gender-neutral quota, and we've seen the result. So we hope to do the same thing, and when we have the general elections in 2015, we hope that this will change again, and we'll have more women in politics, because when you have women in decision-making position like in politics, then you can see change happening, because they bring new things on the agenda. And they bring new ideas, and the agenda is different because they know what is happening, they know the needs of women, which is very, very important. And although we have 30% women in local government, what do we see on the ground? It's very important to know, to see what we see on the ground. When you look at the constitutions, for example, of different political parties, let's talk about the main parties, the Labour Party and the MMM. The Labour Party has been in existence for 77 years now, and this is the first time that we have a woman Secretary General after 77 years. And for the MMM, we've never had a woman Secretary General or President. And when you look at the constitution as well, the Labour Party, in their constitution, they say that there must be at least 30% women in the executive committee in decision-making position. But they don't say that there must be 30% women in parliament or 30% women as candidates. You see, it's good to have it on paper, but then they don't implement it, you see. For the MMM, it's even worse, because they say that there must be 20% women as candidates, and they've never done it, never ever done it. You see, and even in parliament, when not in parliament, as ministers, when you look at the cabinet, what kind of ministries do they give women? You see, either women's rights or social security. We had a woman who was Minister of Health, but she didn't stay for long for the different reasons. I won't go into these details, you see. So this is about politics. This is why I would say that we are still lagging behind. And for local government, I'm very happy because we work at village levels. And when you see these women, I was with them Yesterday, for example, I was doing work. I was in a workshop with 5 villagers of Roswell. They are very vocal, and you can see that change will happen, and the whole scenario, the whole pictures of villagers will change with these women. I was really happy to see these women talk and bringing new items on the agenda, and we can discuss more about it later. But there's something that I would like to talk about, which is close to my heart, and you talked about it, is the media. This is very, very close to my heart. You see, where you have problems, really, it's in the media. We don't realize it because maybe we don't read between the lines. When you look at the media, when you look at women's voices in the media, women speak at only 19% in the media. And this is not only in Mauritius, Your Excellency. This is in all the SADC countries as well. It's not only in Mauritius. They speak at 19% only. And on what subjects do they talk? What kind? You know, I'll ask you all here today, maybe when you go back home, please try to do a little exercise. Just take one newspaper, Le Mauricien, L'Express, or any newspaper, and count the number of pictures, not in advertisement. Count the number of pictures in articles, number of pictures of women, number of pictures of men, and then you talk about it. And then you just take one article, just take one article and count the number of voices of women and the number of voices of men, and see on what topics women talk and on what topics men talk. You will think that women are really stupid in this country. When you do this exercise, you will think that women are stupid because they can't talk on certain subjects. I will show you something. I think I saw that yesterday in L'Express.
I would just intervene to say, Yoga,
Yes.
that I had the chance of being of a different ministry. I had the Ministry for Civil Service Affairs and Employment. I moved from women's rights and social security, and for the first time, another portfolio was given to a woman. I took charge of civil service and employment. So that was the only time.
You see, that was the only time. Good for you. You see, when you look at newspapers, look at this picture. I saw that yesterday. You see, it's so tuning in Drongo, car tuning. Look at this. You know, I don't know why they have to put this kind of picture for car tuning. And there was one which was even worse. That was that was last month, a month ago. You could see the culotte, you know, the knickers of the woman. You know, I think, you know, just a woman sitting on a car, on a motorbike, just for make publicity for cars, for tuning of cars. What has a nude woman got to do with tuning of cars? We must ask ourselves, you know, these kinds of things we must look at. You know, when we talk about gender-based violence, when we talk about gender-based violence, this is gender-based violence. You see, this is violence. And I would like to mention, please, Vimy, I know you just stop me when you have to stop me, because I would like to talk a bit about gender-based violence, because we have the research that has just come out, and we launched this research in November, where we have where women have known gender-based violence. 25% women in this country have known gender-based violence, and 25% men have said they are the perpetrators of this gender-based violence, because we did a household survey for the whole of Mauritius. We did a huge 450 questions, big questionnaire. We did a household survey for men and women. And these men said, yes, we have perpetrated gender-based violence. And
En 2 ans, en tout cas, on a mis la plateforme, mais c'est très difficile pour ces hommes voir sur parce qu'il a beaucoup bougé et qui va nous pousser à aller en
particular attention on the environment and really works towards sustainable development. Because today, what we are talking and what we are seeing about all the to end violence, I think she would have more guts or take more decisions not to be in this situation. And when we see that it costs to the country, the cost of violence, even in my factory, for example, I would say when a woman is affected with violence in any kind, she will not come to work for 11 days, a minimum. This is the average. And how much it costs to the country, I think that the decision makers must understand how much it costs to the country, public services, all the cost towards violence. I think that the UN message this year is really very important for us, because this is how we will live in peace. And I believe personally that we have to have the critical mass to make things happen. For example, I really appreciate, for example, in Mauritius, how we have the associations, and we have built WIN as an apex, where it brings together women entrepreneurs, women professionals, young professionals, and gender links. So I think that it is this type of structure that we have to privilege, and we need more women. For example, we appreciate Umila is there. We need any legal advice. We give a ring. So our network is strong. So we need strong networks, and we need really women who are dedicated to move the women agenda. This is how I find the world.
Okay, there's no disputing the fact that you're very passionate about all this. Ça s'entend. Well, the dance floor is yours. What I mean is, oui, bien sûr, vas-y.
Okay, I'm very happy. Well, when Aline was talking about the answer, maybe getting more women to work, so that this will end poverty, this will end gender-based violence, and something that we very often forget when we talk about gender-based violence is other problems, health problems associated to gender-based violence, HIV and AIDS. These are associated with gender-based violence, so we must bear all these in mind, and how much it costs to the health, to the hospitals and beds and all that when these women go to health centers. And we must always bear in mind this problem of HIV and AIDS when we talk about gender-based violence.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Now the pot is cooking. I mean, just listening, both ways. And since we're talking about media, and I also work with some public space and media space, one of the things is that, I'm sitting in a room full of very knowledgeable people. Great expertise. You're knowledgeable. You're influential in your ways. It's critical that women like yourselves are also writing. It's important that in this space, where there are no articles from women, who must be doing that writing? Who are these women that we are waiting for? Who are we waiting for? Because yes, they're editors and they may very well not allow your articles to go through or whatever, but that critical mass that you're talking about within this public space, within the media as a vehicle, as a tool, also requires that kind of critical mass, looking at it as something strategic, having a strategy of knowing that women need to be pushing and getting the information out there ourselves, and writing the articles and these discussions that we're having in spaces like these, taking it upon ourselves to use the public spaces as well to do it ourselves. Because I think that's also what's missing, is that it happens in closed spaces and it's useful here. And then we're wondering where are the women in the media space, but no one's going to ever allow us no one's going to ask us. No one's going to allow us. So that's the challenge that I'd like to pose. That what are some of the things that need to be done within the space that I'm in? It's taking the initiative and realizing how important it is for women like yourselves to be writing, for young Mauritians to be picking up the paper and finding your voice and finding you talking about those issues as passionately as you do, and stirring it within themselves as well. And then the second thing I wanted to say, mentor. We must mentor. I think we must commit ourselves to creating the generational gap and thinking about at all times the women who are coming behind, and how do we at a very early stage begin to engage with them differently, raise our daughters differently. It's a theory of grow your own trees. We may not necessarily be able to change the world, but we can certainly have an impact in our own homes. We can create revolutions in our own homes. Yes, they'll have to go out into a world that's still difficult, but we can raise our daughters differently. We also need to interrogate and question ourselves consistently. Are we perpetuating the cycles? Are we raising our daughters? We're out in public space fighting hard, but when we come home, we treat our daughters differently to our sons, and already that creates a problem for the daughter who must move into the public space. So that's really
two very valid points there. I think we've got a first question there.
Yes, it's not quite a question. My name is Aisha Jiwa. I'm an attorney by profession, and I was quite happy in Bali. Well, first of all, good evening everyone, and greetings to all you formidable ladies whom I've been listening to. And Ambali, I'm quite grateful to you because this is exactly what I was going to engage everyone to think about. We have heard about women in democracy, but we have not heard much about education. And I think that our mind should also go towards education and formation, and this is why I'm telling you, Ambali, I'm very grateful to you, because somewhere, all you ladies, please think in terms of going out and sharing your experience with our young ladies who are growing up. Look out, rest assured, our girls are not stupid. Every year, I'm not an authority in education, but year in, year out, our girls are doing better than the boys. It's not quite about doing better, but it's also about where will they go afterwards. I mean, the lawyers world, you will agree with me that nowadays the boys are, outnumbered by the girls on the bench, within the practitioners, in all the lines, small girls. Slowly, this is a message of hope. The girls are coming up. But I have noticed from my commitment to secondary education is that we do not have careers guidance. So we are not asking you for careers guidance. We are asking you to come and share your experiences. Come on. The system does not have a careers guidance right now. Right? Come on, please, reach out and share with the girls, or the boys for that matter. Let them hear as well. Let them know what's happening. Let them change their mind, their mindset. Let them treat the others as equals. We are not going to, at this stage, ask them to treat us as betters, but at least give us our due. Let's start early. Thank you.
Who's got a next comment or question? Yes, Amina.
Thank you, Vimi, Excellency. I'm here today representing the Women in Networking group, and we have a program. We have two important ones, I think, which would help to women in democracy. If I don't talk about the four objectives of WIN, but I think the Women Leadership Program is something that is coming up as being one of the most important ones. Flowing from education, finding that women needs to come up to be assertive, to be able to talk and say what they feel, what is happening around them, so that they will be able to participate. And not only in decision making, politics, but whether in entrepreneur, whether to become managers and so forth. So that I think we should really go for this women leadership program. And up to now, if I get the figures right, we've come to about 360 already. 260, yes, coming up, which is more than what we expected to do, and I think this is something which would really help women to come up in the democratic society that we want. And the other one concerning the gender-based violence, we have a program which we have started and which now really rolling is the education and prevention of gender-based violence. Of course, looking at women, it's very sad. Actually, I wanted to add this because you said about the economic cost of gender-based violence. A study was done in Mauritius 2 years ago by MRC and Ministry of Gender, and it cost Mauritius 6 billion rupees. If you hear me right, and it's there, it's in all costs, whether health, police, judiciaries, everything. 6 billion to Mauritius, tiny Mauritius. I think it's a lot of money, a lot of money. So education and prevention, educating our girls, obviously, but obviously our boys, on not only getting them academically performing well, but definitely getting them to understand, the change, how women and men should be, what kind of a society we want, where women and men should be together, side by side, and not, one behind the other or under the other. The issue, we have been talking to boys for the past year in the prevention of gender-based violence, the program which is called the MAV, Men Against Violence program, that is aimed at younger boys of between 12 and 22. The reaction has been very positive, getting them to understand how to treat women differently, especially respecting women and protecting their peers. That has worked. So I think we should be able to put more into that, and that's where we will be. And the thing that you asked, and I wanted to ask also, was when would we know? Well, when we see it happening, and when I see less women coming to me in tears, and men too, by the way.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I know I might be of the wrong sex to ask this question. Sorry, Jen.
No issue with that. You may go ahead. Thank you.
I'm very glad about the last interventions, because I'm Ivan from the South African High Commission, by the way, is that often when I listen in the space of the public arena talking about women against violence and the education, you hear a lot of talk about the girl child and the education, which is extremely important for the girl child to get a voice. And all of these movements, that's been going on for quite some time now. And by the way, in South Africa, the women's department gets the third biggest slice of after education, healthcare, and then it's the women's department who gets the third biggest budget. But the thing is, what I just coming to your point is, a lot is being done and talk to the girl child. I mean, in the UN you hear it all the time, the girl child. But I've never seen a document where the UN said anything about the boy child. Somehow there's this miraculous thing that they think boys just grow up by themselves. I'm from a family of 11 boys and 2 girls, and I asked my mother which was the hardest to bring up. She said the 2 girls. I said, why? I said, well, the boys go outside and somehow they grow up if they don't break their necks falling out of a tree. They sort of just grow up. But therein lies the fundamental problem. Boys just grow up. They're just left to grow up with other boys. Now, whatever that discussions are, you don't necessarily want to know, but is it in the right direction? By focusing so strongly just on the girl child and forgetting there's another child, the boy child, which, by the way, when he's young, is weaker than a girl. Any young girl the same age as a boy in young age can bully a boy very easily. And when he finally catches up in strength, she's a lady and is not allowed to get her back. But here comes the thing. As you just said, the focus must be, while you are giving the girl child the voice, make sure at the same time you give that same message to the boy, that him and his peers can't just keep on their merry way like Peter Pan and never grow up. And that's, I think, in the UN, I've never seen such a document. I would love to one day, and that's where I say that things will change, is when people also start talking to the boy child and realizing that his mother is precious, not just his dad. And by the way, many don't even know who their dads are. Thank you.
Like to respond to that? No? I think you got what?
No.
Okay,
I think you've got a good point. The problem is we don't talk about the boy child so much because it's the girl child who has lots of problems, you see. And even when we talk about the media, you see, men have their voices in the media, women don't have their voices in the media. Now, talking about boys, when we did our research on gender-based violence, we did a set of questionnaire for men as well, and you will be surprised, 50% men have known violence when they were small. This is a lot. 50% of all men we've interviewed, they've said they've known violence when they were small. So we've done men and women as well, which is very important. I'm very happy you've raised this point. You see, maybe this is why we have these kind of men nowadays, because if these men have known violence when they were small, how do they grow up, you see? So it's important to look at the boy child as well, because when you look at street children, for example, you have more boys than girls. They're sitting in the street or not going to school. If you make if you make a research, and I know what I'm talking about because it's all statistics. You see, we've done this research, and there is a problem with boys, definitely.
Urmila would like to.
I just would like to sound a message of hope. I've heard a lot of very dark things. To answer the question, when will we know? Who says that we're not there already? Who says? I think we spend a lot of time lamenting on things that are not happening, because we will never get to an ideal situation where everything is right. It does not exist. Why can't we seize the moment, use today, and say, yes, we have gone a long way. Of course, there's still a long way to go. There are a lot of atrocities happening. They will continue happening. And God knows they were probably happening twice as much before. We just didn't hear about them. Let's just try to be relative. I mean, the point I'm making is just very short. One is about role models, and the second one is about men. Role models, I think we can only hope for women. There are women in power, women in responsibility, women in positions, in decision-making positions, inspire other women. That is the day. We do not have very many women who inspire us around us, unfortunately. Very often, when women get into positions of power, they become like men. They emulate men because this is the way to gain gravitas. That's the way to do it. That's one thing. And the second thing, men, we love them and we need them. And I refuse to accept that women can stand on their own. I think women need men. And I think we should celebrate men as much as we celebrate women. Thank you very much.
Urmila, sorry if you sounded like feminist. I don't think we were.
Yeah.
Right, yes, Vimali.
Brief comment.
Yeah,
just
sure.
in response
And then we'll have the quick time to take a final question, and then we'll move on to the vote of thanks, and then we've got our networking next door.
I just want to use a personal example to link into the, the tone of hope, but also in terms of the point that you made about what happens to women when they become, when they get into power. And I mean, when I was coming here, one of the thoughts that I had was that when you speak of women in democracy, for me, it is to speak to a completely different kind of leadership. And I think that's what we need to take ownership of and understand and claim. It's not about leaving aspects of ourselves out of the room and becoming something else. Precisely that which we have is precisely that what is missing in the world, and it's a different way of looking at the world, it's a different way of being in the world, it's a different way of participating in the world. And an example for me, I've never met Dr. Nokwe, and so I'm a young South African, I'm coming to Mauritius for this first time, I'm with elders, luminaries in my industry from, I'm having a really big experience coming out here as a young person. There are a lot of things that are happening for me in terms of my own personal development, so I'm in a special trip in terms of this role models and the being developed. And the interesting thing was yesterday I was journaling and writing about, okay, what happened yesterday and how am I feeling and what's happening. And I said to myself, Dr. Nokwe is so amazing because it's made such a difference that she is the head of our mission in Mauritius in the time in which I'm coming. Because what happened is that she is someone who pulls you in, gives you a hug after you've eaten. I'm far from home. I'm having a really challenging experience and a really stretching experience. And the difference that made in terms of the leader here and the manner in which she interacted, and it is precisely because she's a woman. She could have been very clean, very clear-cut, I can't be emotional, I'm at work, and I'm a high commissioner, and this is my job. Keep it very clear-cut and clean. And it made a difference, and it's that kind of example where precisely that made the difference for me, because it empowers and affirms me, and it develops my whole person in a completely different kind of way, because it gave me grounding, it gave me anchor.
So we've got a fabulous role model in the room.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got the time to take a final question before we close. Yes.
One final thing I would like to say is that I think you've been blessed with a very avant-gardist mother, right? The ideal situation, I feel, is that if we could just raise our children without having a gender issue from their birth, right? Children are children. One is going to be fragile, one is not going to be fragile. It might be the boy who's fragile and not the girl. Children will be children. We need to raise them in the best possible manner. But until we get there, we need to cater for the situations, the push, which have been created for a while. And I believe Loga will agree with me when I say that through a cross-section of society needs change. From down to up there needs change. So before we reach that particular situation where the children will be raised all similarly by enlightened mothers or parents, ideally, we have to cater for the other situations. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. I get the feeling it's going to be a very exciting and moving and networking next door, so we can carry on the discussion. We have come nearly to the end of this whole part on the debate. Thank you very much to Bali. Thank you, Loga. You're very busy people, but you still found time to be here. Thank you again, Fatumia, and thank you, Aline. But before we move to next door, I believe in Bali you've got a poem for us. Yes, that would be good.
So we make choices around how we use our voices, and sometimes the urgency weighs on the side of having the ugly conversation and having the difficult conversation, because in some spaces they just don't happen and they don't exist. So this piece looks at a situation in South Africa which has been a recurring situation, strangely enough. Every 2 years, sort of every 2 years, women are attacked at the local taxi rank, and for a lot of majority of women and people generally in South Africa, we travel by taxi if you don't have a car, and you need to get to wherever you're going and get to work and all the rest of it. So it's an unavoidable way of passage. And these women are attacked and stripped of their clothing for wearing miniskirts. And it's happened twice, and in fact, it's just recently happened in Malawi, where women were banned from wearing miniskirts, and then it's also happened in Namibia, where there was another discussion around preventing women from wearing miniskirts. And so this piece is called Some of Us Still Have to Walk, and it was my attempt at documenting my outrage, because I think that we could be more outraged enough to act and not allow being overwhelmed to desensitize us from some of these things. Because one day it's you. A brother recalls how his sister came home in tears. Marked and older than her 16 years, knees trembling, too traumatized to speak. The words, cold nights, wrapped in patchworks of anxiety, sewn together unsteadily, the last remains of her fragility when no one remembers her dignity. She had the audacity to wear a miniskirt to Noord taxi rank today, to walk the streets with courage and joy. Her, please excuse me, her and a friend, unhurried innocence and schoolgirl banter in animal print and black leggings. It was too much, or too little for the rising chorus of groping eyes, a stampede of unwelcome, indignant hands grabbing at their thighs, grabbing at their sides. The exacting toll of 50 grown men, fathers and brothers, co-workers and cousins, lovers, who should have been protecting them, taunting them, insulting them. They jeered, took pictures. the terror in the possibilities at Noord. Always palpable and urgent, the stench of sweat and urine and money changing hands. 60 grown men encircling children. The air closing in around them, the humiliation, the fingers that stretch for cover, apologetic and uncomfortable. There are things to be hidden now. Women should be seen and not heard. No. Women should be heard and not seen. No. Women should not be seen and they should not be heard while no one said a thing. Late for work, in conversation, or afraid. So many stood by, watching. Shopping bags placed hastily on worn tar for a better view. It is always someone else's problem what happens to the neighbor's child until it is your child, until it is you. Some of us still have to walk. One step at a time towards our dreams, the texture of our thoughts somewhat coarse, harass and terrorize, unsafe and curse. They deserve it. That's all they're good for. Some of them like it. They're too emotional. It's for their own good. She made me do it. You can't trust them. All she did was wear a mini skirt to Noord taxi rank today. And she may never wear it again. The memory is no longer her own. Heavy against her heart, it is a scar, a map of violent roads already known to her kind, trudged reluctantly and wearily. Her mother, her aunt, her cousin, her sister, her best friend, every single woman torn, until to her own self she becomes the unknown. It is our entire tapestry. All of the things we should say but never do. All of the things that were never said to you. There are more important matters to be discussed. Speeches to be made and ribbons to be cut. Deliberating on nation building and inflation. These are the small issues and passing news. This is what we think doesn't matter. These two girls. All she did was choose to wear a mini skirt to Noord taxi rank today. Here, where menace freely roams the streets, all bulging stomach and bravado, a stranger who feels entitled to put you in your place, armed with the words, chains and knives of tradition and culture, looking for a fight. Here, where there is no recourse. And everyday man will write laws he does not care for, laws he will not follow. Responsibility grows silent. Claiming ignorance, he creates a distance ever ambivalent. No one said a thing. They watched, jeered, they took pictures. And when they were done, they simply went home.
Thank you, Ms. Vilakazi, for inspiring us. May I just remind you, dear guests, that Ms. Vilakazi won the gold medal of International Poetry Olympics in 2012. We have now reached the end of this conversation. I think Her Excellency would like to say a few words. Is that right?
But to you all, I'm very humbled, and the nice things that he's saying. It's unbelievable, but that's it. I'm just thinking it's and I guess also I'm humbled by the fact that you all came, and I hope when we go away, we've all done notes, and as we've been challenged, we'll put it in writing. Somebody, I hope somebody was taking some notes. Make that as a report, Madam Moderator, here, that yes, it shouldn't end here. It's too great an opportunity. I think the views that they expressed there need to be put down and need to run. And I think your expertise, your knowledge, and all your guidance, with your with due respect, your excellency, please let's continue this wonderful, amazing event. And I thank you for your spontaneity, for just getting on the job. And I think, like I said, she's very passionate about what she does. I saw that and I lived that. And I know she was chasing us, and, but we are happy now this has come, and we're here to network. But I think I will be doing a great injustice if I didn't do this. Our publisher here, whom we didn't introduce, we not only had five writers, because the gentleman who came from the Department of Arts and Culture, he himself is a writer, which is amazing, And Mr. Mutlatsi, Dr. Mutlatsi, please stand up. He's our publisher. But he enchanted your children yesterday and today at the stand. He's got a stand at the book fair conferences. He came on his own. He said, and when I wrote him and I said, you've got to come, he came. And he said, I must extend this to you. This is a march of 20,000 women during the peak of apartheid in 1956. We were going to have pass as women. The pass restricts you where you live, or what you do. Those women mobilized, mothers from rural areas, from everywhere, from all walks of life. I know I even remember that day. They walked to the Union Building and delivered to Stray Dog and said, no, we are not going to take a bus. And it shamed the men, because the men, as we say, they are complacent, they took the bus. So here's a book about those women. So you are those women. We have to. I mean, if they did it in 1956, why can't we not did it in 2013? So let's walk the march and liberate ourselves and our boy child, as you say. We mustn't forget them, because it starts the nurturing starts from childhood. And I think that boy child needs to be nurtured too. He, as you say, is told to go and play in the streets. What guidance has he got? But we as mothers know best. Let's do that for our children. Thank you.
We have now reached the end of this conversation. We wish to thank our patron for this event, the South African High Commission, our partners IUC, FOI, and WIN, and our distinguished guests in making this event an inspiring one. We have also been inspired by the global message, a promise is a promise, time for action, to end violence against women. To contribute and end violence against women, our next event of the MFC will also take place on the 19th of March with a fundraising event for SOS Fund. It was a pleasure being your MC tonight. Thank you again for your presence. Let me just remind you, Georgina and Marie-France will gladly give you a rose to remind all of those of you here how this day is special and how you are special. Have a nice evening.